I didn't lose my wife the night I found another man in my bed. I lost her months earlier. I just didn't know the exact date until the cameras showed me the truth. My name is Marcus Reed. I'm a project manager at a civil engineering firm. I make good money because I know how to build things that don't collapse under pressure. My marriage, ironically, became the one structure I failed to inspect closely enough. Danny was beautiful in the way that made people turn their heads in restaurants. Social, warm, easy to love. We met at a company happy hour. She laughed at my bad jokes and touched my arm when she talked. 18 months later, we were engaged. The wedding was lakeside, white flowers, string lights over the water, the kind of day that costs a man nearly $40,000. I paid without complaint. I thought I was buying forever. After the wedding, she said she needed time to figure out her path. Maybe go back to school, maybe start a small business. I told her to take all the time she needed. My salary covered the mortgage on the house we bought, the car payments, the vacations she chose, the dinners out, the gym memberships, the credit cards she used without looking at the balance. 6 years later, nothing had changed. She still hadn't started anything. We had no children. Every time I brought it up, she found a new reason to wait. I swallowed the disappointment because I believed marriage meant patience. Then she joined a high-end boutique gym. I paid the initiation fee and the monthly charge the same week she asked. At first, I was relieved. She came home with color in her cheeks and talked about endorphins. I thought maybe this was the thing that would give her purpose. Within weeks, the gym became her personality. New leggings that cost more than my shirts. New water bottle. New protein powder on the counter. She started guarding her phone like it held state secrets, carrying it into the bathroom, angling the screen away from me at the table, cutting off laughter the second I walked into a room. The distance showed up in small ways first. At dinner, she was physically present but mentally somewhere else. When I told her she looked good after a workout, she gave me a polite smile that never reached her eyes, like my approval had become irrelevant. She grew impatient with ordinary husband things, my hand on her back, asking how her day went, suggesting we watch a movie together. I didn't explode. I did what I always do when something feels structurally wrong. I studied the cracks. One night after she went to bed, I opened the joint credit card app on my phone. The gym charges were there, regular and expected. Then I saw the smoothie bar 2 blocks from the gym. $14, $15. Repeated charges on the same afternoons she told me she had training sessions. I scrolled back through 6 months of statements. The pattern was clear. Smoothies became lunches. Lunches became parking charges at a lot near the gym on days she said she was home. None of it was enough to accuse her of anything. All of it was enough to make my stomach turn. She mentioned a trainer once, casually, over breakfast. "Adrian says my form is finally improving." Her tone was light, practiced. I looked him up later that night. Adrian Cole, younger than me, shirtless in half his photos, standing beside quotes about discipline and limits. His page was full of female clients thanking him for changing their lives. I stared at his face longer than I wanted to admit. The annual fishing trip came up the way it always did. 3 days with 2 old friends, no real cell service, just rods and a cooler. Danny had always been fine with it. This time she asked which weekend twice in 3 days. Then she told me I deserved the break. She told me to stay the whole weekend and not rush back Sunday night. She had never pushed me to stay longer before. The change in her voice was small, but I heard it clearly. She wanted the house empty. She was waiting for me to leave. I didn't confront her. I did what I do best. I checked the systems I already had in place. The doorbell camera and the interior cameras in the living room and kitchen had been installed years earlier after a neighborhood break-in. They still recorded to the cloud. I opened the app on my phone, made sure notifications were active, made sure the storage hadn't filled up. I didn't install anything new. I didn't break any laws. I simply made sure the house I paid for was still watching. I let her believe I was going fishing. On a Tuesday night after Danny went to bed early with one of her headaches, I sat at the kitchen table with the credit card statements open on my laptop. The numbers didn't lie even when she did. The smoothie bar charges went back 5 months, always between 1 and 3 in the afternoon, always on days she claimed she was at the gym for long sessions. Some days there were 2 charges within an hour. Enough for 2 people if one of them ordered tea. He large protein boost. I cross-checked the dates against her calendar on the fridge. Training days lined up perfectly with the charges. I printed the statements and highlighted every entry in yellow. At home, she kept performing the role of wife, but the performance was slipping. She still asked what I wanted for dinner, but she barely listened to the answer. She still kissed me goodnight sometimes, but it felt automatic, like muscle memory. Her attention belonged somewhere else. I noticed the new details because I was looking for them now. Longer showers after the gym. She came out smelling like expensive body wash instead of sweat. New perfume that wasn't the one I bought her last Christmas. Extra care with her makeup before she left for classes, even though she used to go barefaced and proud of it. A sudden confidence in the way she walked that didn't come from lifting weights. The name Adrian kept appearing in small ways. She mentioned him more often, always with that same light, careful tone. Adrian corrected my squat form today. Adrian says I could compete if I wanted to. I didn't ask questions. I just listened and filed it away. One evening, I sat in my truck outside the gym for 20 minutes after work, watching the entrance. I saw her come out with 2 other women, laughing. No Adrian that day. But the pattern on the card told me the truth, even when my eyes didn't. The fishing trip conversation happened on a Wednesday night while I was loading the cooler in the garage. She came out with a glass of wine and leaned against the workbench. "When are you leaving again?" she asked. "Thursday morning, same as every year." "You should stay the whole weekend this time. Really unplug, you work so hard." I looked at her. She was smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes the way it used to. She took a sip of wine and added, "Don't rush back Sunday night. Take the extra day if you want." She had never once encouraged me to stay longer. Usually she said something about missing me or asking me to text when I got cell service again. The shift was small but unmistakable. She wanted the house to herself. She was already counting the hours until I was gone. I finished packing in silence. Later that night, while she was in the shower, I checked the camera app again. Everything looked normal. Living room empty. Kitchen lights off. Doorbell feed showed the empty driveway. I set the notifications to maximum sensitivity. Then I texted my 2 fishing buddies. I told them something had come up at home and I needed them to cover for me if Danny called. They didn't ask many questions. One of them just replied, "Say the word and we'll back whatever story you need." I didn't install new cameras. I didn't hire anyone. I simply made sure the systems I already paid for were working. Then I packed my fishing gear like I was actually going, loaded the cooler, and set the alarm on my phone for Thursday morning. On Thursday morning, I kissed my wife goodbye knowing I was not going fishing. I was going hunting. Thursday morning, I played the part perfectly. I loaded the fishing rods into the truck bed where she could see them from the kitchen window. I made a show of checking the cooler, adding ice, moving the tackle box. Danny stood in the doorway in her robe, coffee mug in hand, watching me with that same easy smile she had worn the night before. She told me to drive safe. She told me to relax. She told me she would be fine. Then she kissed me on the mouth like nothing in the world was wrong. I drove north on the highway for 20 minutes, long enough for the lie to breathe. I merged into traffic, kept my speed steady, then took the next exit and circled back through side roads until I was heading south again. I checked into a Marriott 15 minutes from my own house and paid for 2 nights in cash. I texted my buddies again and told them enough of the truth that they could cover for me without lying too much. They answered within minutes. They had my back. The waiting was brutal in a different way than I expected. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed staring at my phone, refreshing the camera app every few minutes even though I knew the notifications would reach me first. The room smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and stale coffee. I didn't drink. I didn't turn on the television. I just sat there thinking about the money I had spent on her over 6 years. The empty spare room we never turned into a nursery. The way she had smiled when I left that morning like she was already free. Friday night at 7:14, the notification came. Motion detected, front door. I opened the live feed. Adrian Cole walked up my driveway carrying a gym duffel bag and a bottle of wine. He didn't look around. He didn't hesitate. He walked like a man who had done this before. Danny opened the door before he knocked. She was wearing the black leggings she usually saved for nights she wanted to look good for me. She smiled at him the way she used to smile at me years ago. She touched his arm as she pulled him inside. I watched the interior cameras. The living room feed caught her laughing at something he said, her hand resting on his chest. The kitchen feed caught the wine being opened, 2 glasses filled, Adrian moving through my house like he belonged there. He leaned against the counter where I made coffee every morning. Then Danny took his hand and led him out of frame toward the stairs. I saved everything, screenshots with timestamps, short video clips downloaded straight to my phone. The doorbell feed showing his car parked in my driveway. The exact moment she opened the door. The wine, the touching, the comfort, the familiarity of 2 people who had done this more than once. A few minutes later, the kitchen feed cut to black. Then the living room feed went dark too. They had found the cameras or turned them off. It didn't matter. I had enough. More importantly, I now knew the truth with absolute certainty. I got into my truck and drove back toward my house in total silence. No music, no calls, no rage, just a cold, clean feeling in my chest, like something human had switched off and something else had taken its place. I parked 2 streets away under a tree that blocked the streetlight. I walked the rest of the way in the dark, hoodie up, hands in my pockets, heart steady for the first time in weeks. I reached my front door. The key felt heavier than it should have. I slid it into the lock and turned it as quietly as I could. The door opened into the softly lit hallway of the house I paid for. His gym bag was the first thing I saw. It sat on the floor beside the shoe rack like it belonged there. A pair of men's sneakers rested next to my work boots. The open bottle of wine stood on the kitchen counter with 2 glasses, both used. The house smelled like red wine and someone else's cologne. Every detail felt like an insult. I walked upstairs without calling out. At the bedroom door, I heard enough to know exactly what was happening on the other side. I opened the door anyway. They were in my bed. For one long second, nobody moved. Danny's face emptied of color. Adrian scrambled upright, half covered by the sheet, shocked but not nearly ashamed enough. I said nothing. The silence was worse than any scream. Adrian made the mistake of speaking first, like he had any right to open his mouth inside my house. "Listen, man." I turned and walked back downstairs. In the garage, I found the old wooden baseball bat I hadn't touched in years. I carried it back up. This wasn't a heroic moment. It was ugly and animal and necessary. Adrian tried to stand his ground at first. I hit him across the ribs hard enough to fold him. The second swing caught his shoulder. Danny screamed my name over and over, begging me to stop, crying that I was going to kill him. I didn't hear her as my wife anymore. I heard her as the woman who had invited another man into the bed I bought. I kept swinging until Adrian stopped trying to act tough and started trying to crawl away. Blood ran from his nose onto my floor. Danny grabbed my arm, sobbing, promising anything, saying it meant nothing, saying she loved me. I shoved her off so hard she fell back onto the bed. I dropped the bat. Instead of letting Adrian hide in the room, I grabbed him by the back of his neck and dragged him into the hallway. He was barely dressed, injured, humiliated, and crying. I pulled him down the stairs past the open wine bottle, past his gym bag, and straight to the front door. Danny followed halfway, wrapped in a sheet, screaming so loudly that a neighbor's porch light came on across the street. I opened the door and threw him outside onto the lawn. His clothes and bag landed beside him. Under the streetlight, Adrian Cole no longer looked like the confident trainer from social media. He looked broken and exposed and terrified. I stood in the doorway and told him that if he wanted to call the police, he should go ahead, because the cameras had already caught him walking into my house with wine like he owned the place and leaving like this. That shut him up. I slammed the door. When I went back upstairs, Danny was sitting on the edge of the bed shaking. She started confessing through sobs. It had only been a few months. She was lonely. I worked too much. Adrian made her feel wanted. She was sorry. She would do anything. I listened until she ran out of words. Then I said, "Call someone to stay with you tonight." I left and drove back to the hotel. By sunrise, Adrian was in a hospital. By Monday, Danny was in a lawyer's office trying to figure out how much of my life she could still steal. What? Monday morning, I called a divorce attorney before I even made coffee. I walked into his office with a folder and a flash drive. Doorbell footage, interior camera clips with timestamps, credit card statements with every smoothie and lunch highlighted, a written timeline, dates, times, Adrian Cole's Instagram. Everything. I didn't walk in like a broken husband. I walked in like a man delivering evidence. The attorney understood immediately. The marriage had no children. The house had been purchased before we married, and every mortgage payment had come from my account. I had carried every financial burden alone. Danny's strongest possible argument would have been that she was a dependent spouse who sacrificed her career for the marriage. The footage changed the shape of that argument completely. She didn't look like a devoted wife who gave up opportunities. She looked like a woman who had used the comfort of my money while bringing another man into my home. Adrian became a brief threat. There was talk he might press charges or sue, but Adrian also knew exactly what I had saved. Footage of him arriving at a married woman's house with wine, staying long enough to be caught in the marital bedroom, and leaving humiliated under a streetlight. Any lawsuit would drag his conduct into public view and destroy what was left of his training career. The gym would hear about it. His female clients would see the footage. His image would collapse. So Adrian disappeared into silence. No charges were ever filed. Danny's legal team pushed for spousal support. They argued she hadn't worked in 6 years and needed time to rebuild. My attorney countered with the affair evidence, the use of the marital home, the financial records showing I had funded her entire lifestyle while she conducted the affair on my dime. Settlement negotiations were short and ugly. The final confrontation happened across a conference table instead of in our bedroom. Danny looked smaller. No gym confidence. No polished arrogance. Just fear and the beginning of real understanding. She sat across from me while her lawyer talked and realized the man she thought would beg was now calmly removing her from his life. I agreed to a small lump sum payment only to end the divorce quickly. No ongoing spousal support, no claim to the house, no retirement accounts, no truck, no comfortable life funded by me. She signed because she had no better option. I left the room with the house, the money, and the proof. She thought the worst night of her life was the night I came home. She was wrong. The worst day was the day the money stopped. What? Danny left the house with a small settlement check and whatever clothes and personal items she could fit in her car. No monthly support. No ownership stake in anything I had built. For the first time in 6 years, she had to work, budget, and live without my income protecting her from reality. She found a job at a retail store and moved into a small apartment across town. The first time rent came due, she called her sister for help. Mutual friends heard enough to understand why I cut her off completely. Some tried to stay neutral until the truth became too ugly to ignore. Danny's social circle shrank fast. The comfortable identity she had worn as the beautiful wife with the good life disappeared along with the money. Adrian spent a few days in the hospital and then vanished from my world. Whether he left the gym, got fired, or relocated, I didn't care enough to find out. The man who had walked into my house like he owned it left under a streetlight with nothing but pain and shame. I kept the house but replaced the bed the same day the divorce was final. I changed the locks before sunset. The silence hurt at first. Then it started to feel like ownership again. I cooked for one. I watched what I wanted on television. I stopped apologizing for existing in my own space. I don't call it healing, not yet. I call it surviving. She brought him into my house, into my bed, under my roof. So I threw him out, divorced her clean, and kept everything she thought I was too weak to protect.